Okay, we are going to tonight be doing do not commit adultery. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So do not commit adultery. So let's start over here, the beginning. Introduction. As we explore the importance of our tradition places on the sanctity of marriage, we will also see how this debate guides us in all relationships. So we always start with the Peshat, the simple meaning. And the Peshat over here is, what is adultery? Is an extramarital sexual relationship. And it's basically in Hebrew, lo, it's the same in both places, Deuteronomy and Exodus, lo tinaf. And the conversation question over here is, this diber is referring to physical infidelity. What is the relationship between physical infidelity and emotional infidelity? Is there even something which is emotional infidelity? Any comments?
Never
Okay.
heard of it.
So
I
go on.
suppose that you. I'm sure that there is such a thing, because I'm sure that you could have feelings for somebody else and even not act upon it, which you
Yep.
shouldn't. You shouldn't put yourself in a position to even be like that.
I guess so. What do you think the relationship is between? I guess one would lead to the other, maybe.
If you're in the same room, yes, I suppose. If you're constantly in the same company,
Right.
and
Okay.
your thought.
So what I want to talk about is, as we approach the yesod, the underlying principle of do not commit adultery, we find a real comparison between the marriage relationship and our relationship with God. Whereas the marriage relationship is obviously to get married and then do not commit adultery. So too with God, and when we look at the first two dibrot, I am the Lord your God and do not have any other gods, they are the parallel. So, do not have any other gods is also a type of infidelity. And that's because marriage and our relationship with God is governed by something called a covenant. And a covenant is different to a regular contractual relationship because it's really the coming together of two or more parties in order to create something for the benefit of the other, or better yet, the whole. It's the merging of identities from the I to the we. And that's what's unique in this marriage relationship and also in our relationship as a Jewish people with God. Let's look at a few sources over here. It says that God started off by making a covenant with Abraham, and of course the word in Hebrew for covenant is brit, right? The bris. And God comes to Abraham and he makes this covenant with him for all future generations. Then he continued that covenant until Sinai. And in fact, Sinai becomes a covenantal experience. And that's what it says. He declared to you the covenant that he commanded you to observe. And that's the Brit. And what was it? The Serata Devarim, the Ten Commandments, and he put them in the stone. And what happens if the Jewish people sway from the way of the covenant? That's what it says over here in Leviticus. Yet, even then, were you in the land of your enemies, I will not reject them, spurn them, so to destroy them, annulling my covenant with them, for I am the Lord their God. So this Brit, this covenant, starts from Abraham, continues to his children until Sinai, the Jewish people. After Sinai, anyone can join, a convert can join, and it can never be broken. In terms of marriage, oh, my mother's here. Hello, Mom.
Yes.
In terms of marriage, so it says like this in the Torah. At the beginning of the Torah, man is Adam and then Eve. And it says, therefore, man must leave his father and mother and cling to his wife so that they will become one flesh. Yes, Greg.
Rabbi, just a quick question. You said that after Sinai, after Sinai, anyone could convert. What happened before Sinai?
I don't think so. I think you had to be a member of the family. The covenant was just from Abraham through his children. The strange thing is that we know that Abraham and Sarah converted a lot of people, but they are nowhere to be found. The Jewish people ultimately were the biological children who then turned over into let's call them spiritual children for the rest of history.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so marriage is also a clinging, a devakus. A person should be attached. Couples should be attached. Rashi says, where do they become a basa echad? Where do man and wife become one flesh? In the child. And the Ramban Nachmanides says it's in the actual relationship. They should, like we said in the definition, they should merge their identities into one. The story is told of Rabbi Levine that went to the doctor with his wife, and his doctor said, "What's the problem?" And she had some problem with her leg, and he said, "Our leg is sore. Our leg pains." That's the idea of the covenant, is that you no longer think of yourself independently. You always identify with the person, God, that you have a covenant with. And where do we know that marriage is considered a covenant? The verse in Malachi reveals it. Right? You make a brit, a covenant with one's spouse. The questions over here are: can covenantal relationships be broken? So we saw that the one between man and God cannot be. We're in an eternal covenant with God. That's a very deep concept. Between people, it can be. Marriage can be broken through something called a get. And the Vilna Gaon says this word get is a gimel and a tes, and it's the only place in the Torah they are together. Otherwise, they are separate ladders. So this document comes to separate them. And the idea of the get is that it's not a simple relationship marriage that you walked into that you can just walk out of. You need to go through a real process of separation to almost undo the identities again, that people can go on to further their lives. Okay. What are the differences between our relationships with other human beings and our relationships with God? What are the covenantal responsibilities of marriage? To think about each other. How has the understanding of them changed over time? Is marriage and the commitments to marriage different today? Are they looser? Are they tighter? What challenges does contemporary society have with this? Any comments? Anyone like to share? Any ideas of? Do you think is the institution of marriage understood as a covenant, and has that changed over time?
I think it's changed over time, big time. Very
Yes.
much so.
How so?
Well, people don't seem to honor their marriage as such, and they can get out of it very easily, except, of course, with a get.
Right.
They don't work hard enough to maintain that covenant.
Right. Maybe there's a lack of understanding from the very beginning that they are in a covenant, and that just like you deal with yourself. You don't leave yourself when you have your issues with yourself. You don't leave your spouse so easily. Okay. I'm actually going to skip this next section. It's a fun section, but we don't have time for it. And it's really about the fact of how people get married. The dating process and the different customs people have. Laban turned around and said, well, it's not our practice to marry off the younger before the older. And okay, now the Hebrew word for faithfulness is Emunah, right? Are we there yet? Yeah. The Hebrew word for faithfulness is Emunah. Emunah, faithfulness, is the loyal adherence to commitments and promises. So I think, to me, that's if we'd ask what, we're searching for core values. What's the core value? We learned do not covet. The core value was to embrace your life and its opportunities, because each person is an individual with an individual role to play. That's a fundamental core value principle of Judaism. Number two, do not be a false witness. Teaches us, do not be careful with what you say. Your words have immense power. Number three was do not steal. I'm going downwards. Do not steal, which was to respect the right of possession that people have, and to acknowledge that. And this one, do not commit adultery. The core value is to be a person of loyalty. Be loyal, right? A loyal adherence to commitments and promises. You give your word, you keep it, right? That's really what do not commit adultery is. You got into a marriage. You decided to get married. You committed. Oh, I'm back.
Okay.
Oh, Barry was going to give us a little bit of a show there.
Sorry, the opportunity came and went.
Rabbi, I want to ask you one question. You haven't moved your books on your bookshelf.
Oh, really? And I'm slow to read.
Yeah, but that's it. The article hasn't even moved. Have you switched to Arizal?
Okay, so here we go. I was going on about.
I'm talking nonsense.
I was going on about loyalty, right? Loyalty means adhering to your commitments and promises. Emunah is a central theme in the relationship we have with God. Now, we think of it as faith, but really it's more being faithful. Relationships are not necessarily devoid of struggle with commitment, like the Israelites' relationship with God. And in marriage, there are many times when the relationships are tested. So let's first define the word Emunah. So it says over here that when the Amalek came to attack the Jewish people, when they just came out of Egypt, there was a war. And it says that Moses went up on top of the mountain and he put his hands up to heaven. And as long as his hands were up to heaven, the Jewish people would win the war. And the verse says, but Moses' hands grew heavy. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it, while Aaron and Hur on each side supported his hands. Thus his hands were Emunah. V'yadav Emunah. V'hi yadav Emunah. His hands remained steady until Adbo Shemesh. So you see from here, the word Emunah means unchanging, steady, right? Faithfulness, loyalty. when Moses questions God's faithfulness, when he's disappointed that Pharaoh has not set the people free, so God says to Moses, I am Hashem. Right? Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty, as El Shaddai. But my name, Ushmi Hashem, my name Hashem, was not made known to them. And Rashi says, I was not recognized by my true attribute for which my name is called Hashem, which denotes that I'm certain to substantiate my promise. Isn't that interesting? When we call Hashem Hashem, right? There are many names God has, but when we call him Hashem, we're really speaking to the fact that God was, is, and will be. He will substantiate his promises. For indeed, I made promises to them, to the forefathers, and did not fulfill them, but I'm about to do that. That's really what God was telling Moses over here. I'm going to reveal that now. I'm going to keep my promise. And then this last source over here says that it's from the prophet Habakkuk, and the Talmud says that Habakkuk came and said that there's one overarching principle called tzaddik be'emunah yichyeh, that the tzaddik, the righteous, shall live by his faithfulness. And that means either two things. Either the righteous is loyal to God, he keeps his promise to God, or he lives with the knowledge that God is righteous, that God is faithful. So what is the relationship between faith and faithfulness? Right? I have faith in God. What does that mean? I really put my trust in God that he will be faithful.
Believe in him.
And what does it mean? Do having faith and being faithful always go together? What does it mean in our relationship with God, and how does it manifest itself in marriage? The Hebrew word for trust is bitachon. What is the relationship between Emunah and bitachon, faith and trust? And I think it's two sides of the same coin. Because faith, who do you trust? Who do we trust? We trust those who are faithful to us, right? We trust those who are faithful to us. You can trust a friend. Why? Because you know he'll be there when you need him. So too, we can trust in God because we know that he'll be there when we need him. In fact, he's much more than that. Okay. So that's really gets down to the essence over here. Yes, Craig.
But doesn't Emunah go beyond that? I mean, there's having trust and faith, but you've got to have, or at least in our personal lives, we have trust and faith because of a track record of what we've experienced in our lives. With Hashem, you know, we don't see the miracles that are around us because we can't see the miracles anymore. Yes, we have our own minor miracles that we each experience, but to have true emunah, true belief, true faith, it requires a far greater trust than what's built on between two mutual people.
So, you know, I don't take this personally because it took me, I was in your exact same mindset and I thought about this. It took me a long time until I realized that I think the way we use faith and this way of thinking about it, that, you know, you've got to have faith in God. You've got to believe that there's a God. It's not something you can prove, but you can believe it, you know. That's a very Christian idea. And I think it came about through the philosophic thinking of the Greek philosophers as something beyond the pale of sensual experience. But for the Jewish people, that's not true. As a people, and that means I'm talking about our collective consciousness is from a historical point of view, the Jewish people experienced God. You know, God took us out of Egypt and he spoke to us at Sinai. that was such an intense and important experience that from then on, we don't have faith that God exists. I don't have faith that you're on the other side of the line. I can hear your voice. I can't see you, so I need to, but I can, I have faith. So when we speak about having faith in someone that you know, right? You don't believe, what's the unknown? The unknown is not whether they exist or not. It's whether they will fulfill what their part of the agreement is, right? Or what you're hoping they will fulfill. That's what faith is. So there is an element of the unknown, but it's not filled up with, making up existence. Not about whether God exists or not. Of course, God exists for us. The question is, will he be faithful? And when I exhibit trust, I understand that God will be faithful. It's I think a very important idea to think about. Thank you for asking that question.
Pleasure. No offense taken at all. Never.
No, it opens it up, because otherwise we think, what do you mean that faith is this? This is what faith means. It means Emunah, unchanging, being stable, being there for someone. Okay. Let's start talking about other relationships, because like with all these dibrot, with all of the 10 Commandments, each one is the epitome of the value which it
You're back.
which underlies it.
No, I'm not.
Right?
We lost you there for a couple of seconds, Rabbi.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, my internet says unstable. Okay, am I back?
Yep.
Okay, good.
I can hear your voice. That's all about all. I got your voice. That's it.
It's okay. You can't see me?
No.
Okay, you
I
should.
don't know what.
Okay.
I don't know.
Anyway.
Let me try.
As a core value, as a core value, as a core, yeah, you raised your hand, Barry. You want to say something?
I didn't. All I've got here is my name, a whole lot of other people's names, and that's all. No pictures.
Okay, but you can hear us. That's good.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Okay. I just wrote back to everyone. Sorry, Mark Schnaps managed to write to me that African internet is better. So I wrote back, laugh out loud, but I didn't realize writing to everyone. Good one, Mark. Okay. So what was I going on about? That the Aseret Dibros, these 10 Commandments, are the general principles of Judaism. And being so, each one is the epitome of its general principle. So, what's the epitome of being faithful? Do not commit adultery, right? Adultery, someone that gets married and stays married and never commits adultery, that's the epitome. That's the negative part of what's the positive side is being loyal, being absolutely loyal, merging one's identity and actually identifying with another person. So where does this idea of loyalty exist in our life, in all relationships? And that's what we're going to start to explore today. We'll finish on Thursday. But there are really many types of relationships with different commitments. The Talmud quotes Rabbi Hanan saying that there are 3 items, if seen in a dream, indicate peace: a river, a kettle, and a bird. The peace he is referring to is peaceful relationships. So the Gaon of Vilna explained what this means. The river, which connects 2 cities for trade, symbolizes a contract. Peaceful when both parties are committed to honest business dealings. The kettle partnership symbolizes partnership, right? So we got business contract, partnership. The fire works together with the pot to heat the water. So too, partners work together, committed to a common goal. A bird able to fly using its wings and tail symbolizes a covenant, the peaceful relationship of 2 personalities melding into one identity. So, you have to know the first thing about loyalty is, what is my relationship? Is it a contract? And therefore what's required is honest business dealings. Is it a partnership, which means that we both work hard? Is it a covenant, in which case I have committed my very identity into this relationship? Here's a comment I made earlier. When Rabbi Levine went with his wife to the doctor to check on her leg, he told the doctor, our leg is sore. Every relationship has commitments. Sometimes they are explicit, normally in business. Sometimes implicit, friendship. I don't know if you ever sat down with a friend and said, okay, well, these are the commitments to each other. They're just implicitly understood. The commitment of marriage is made clear through the ketubah and in the wedding ceremony. There are many symbolic acts, even the very act of the core to the marriage ceremony is when the man gives the woman a ring and says, you are Mukadeshiti, you are now sanctified to me, dedicated to me, which forms actually the relationship, which therefore creates the prohibition of adultery. Business commitments are made clear through contracts. Other relationships like parenting and friendship also have their commitments. Parenting, what's the commitment of a parent to a child? What about a child to a parent? Well, that's the 5th commandment. Honor your parents. The following texts give us insight into the commitments of these relationships. So let's just see one over here. And that is the Talmud says, a father is obligated to circumcise his son, to redeem, and that's number 1, to do a brit. Number 2, to redeem him. If the child gets captured, it's an obligation of a parent to redeem their child. Sorry, not that, to redeem him if he's the firstborn, if that's still a boy. 3 is teach him Torah. 4, find him a wife. Yes, that's an obligation of parents to marry off their kids. And 5 is to teach them a trade. Teach him a trade. And some say 6 is learn how to swim. So, most people, you probably ask them, why did you have children? They'll say, I have no clue. It's just what you do, right? You say, well, what are your obligations now to your children? Most people say to take care of them. But really what comes out of this to me is to not only care, but teach Torah, is to educate. It's a real responsibility of parents to educate their children. We almost think, yeah, okay, my kid's going to go to school and that will be it. No, the school is helping you to educate your children. So it's really your obligation. Find a wife also, it's not just, you can let your child look, but at the end of the day, right, you got to pay. You got to make sure you got to find a spouse is very important, and a trade as well, to make sure, that could include university fees. That one is obligated to pay for one and two, but it's not only paying, it's having the mindset that I am obligated to help my children to fulfill or to get prepared for life, right? To be educated, to be married, to have a living. Those are the preparations for life. All right, so I'm going to stop there today. Anyone have any comments or questions? All right, so we'll stop here and look forward to seeing you on Thursday.